Good morning, everybody. This is Stephen Pugh of the Home Bible College. It's July the 19th today, and we're looking at Psalm 53. Now, Psalm 53 is one of those psalms which is quoted in the New Testament. Paul quotes it extensively when he's dealing with the subject of the gospel in Romans. And in Romans, we wouldn't automatically understand quite what he means. I'm going to read it through with you, and I'm going to explain to you what I believe the psalmist was originally saying, and then we're going to see how Paul applies this passage in Romans. Now, I've called it the foolish man. The fool isn't a person that's lacking in intelligence. Okay? A fool is someone who has all of the intelligence, but he lacks the application. You see, wisdom is the correct application of knowledge. The fool is the incorrect application of knowledge. And David says, the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt. They have done abominable iniquity. There is none of them that doeth good. He says there is none that doeth good, but I've added that little phrase, there is none of them that doeth good. This isn't a commentary upon all human beings. When we're in Romans and we read there is none that doeth good, there is none righteous, no, not one. He's not there saying that there is no righteous people in the world outside of grace. What he's saying is that amongst those that are foolish, there is none that are righteous. And there is the fool says in his heart, he lives his life as if there's no God. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't a God. It's just that he's not correctly applying what he knows about God. And God looketh down from heaven upon the children of men to see if there were any that did understand and that did seek God. So he's not looking down upon the righteous here. He's not looking down upon David. He's looking down upon the wicked. He's looking down upon those who live foolishly, the ones that have gone corrupt, the ones that have done abominable iniquities. There is none of them that does good. None of them do good. And people talk about the atheist today. We need to engage with the atheist. We need to talk with the atheist. Well, according to David here, the atheist is the person that says in his heart there is no God. But David doesn't just stop there. This is not an intellectual discussion. David comes to the very heart of it. He shows that those that say that there is no God become corrupt because they have no restraint upon their wickedness. There's nothing that they do that's good, and God looks down to see if there's any that have any understanding and that do seek after God, and every one of them has gone back. They have altogether become filthy. There is none of them that doeth good, not even one. Amongst those who forsake God, amongst those in the covenants, these are people who are not Christians. Amongst those that forsake God, there's not one of them that does good. No, not one. And then verse 4, have the workers of iniquity no knowledge, who eat up my people as they eat bread? They've not called upon God. There were they in great fear, where no fear was. For God hath scattered the bones of him that encampeth against thee. Thou hast put them to shame, because God hath despised them. Oh, that the salvation of Israel will come out of Zion, when God bringeth back the captivity of his people. Jacob shall rejoice, and Israel shall be glad. So in this psalm, it's a maskil. It is a teaching psalm. It's designed to teach the wicked and the fools about wisdom. Wisdom, as I said, is the correct application of knowledge. It is the thing that causes a man to fear God and to be afraid of his judgments and to restrain himself in his sin and to turn from his wicked ways and to seek God. That's the point. And those that fear God, those that seek God, they are the wise. Those that fear God and seek God are those that do good, and they will dwell in the land and they will be fed. Now, when we come to Romans, we have that expression, there is none that seeketh after God. They are all become unrighteous. There is none righteous, no, not one. These expressions, they're not referring to all human beings. No. These expressions are used about those that are wicked. Amongst the wicked there is none that doeth good. Now Psalm 54, I've called it a prayer for relief. Let's read it together. Again, it's a maskil. It's a psalm of David when the Zephims came and said to Saul, doth not David hide himself with us? Save me, O God, by thy name, and judge me by thy strength. Now initially we might jump on this and say, there we are, you see, David's saved. He calls upon God to save him, therefore he must be saved. Well, Old Testament salvation, as we've said so many times, can have a different interpretation than New Testament salvation. In fact, in this psalm, he's going to explain what that salvation is, and it's certainly nothing to do with the sort of salvation that Christians talk about. He says, save me, O God, by thy name, and judge me by thy strength. You say, what? What has judgment got to do with salvation? Because you see, in the Old Covenant, when God judged David, he saved him. When God judges the wicked, he destroys them. And so what David is doing is he's putting himself into the hands of the judge of all men. And he knows that God will deliver the righteous and he will destroy the wicked. So he says to God, save me, judge me, save me, judge me. Hear my prayer, O God, give ear to the words of my mouth, for strangers are risen up against me. That's why he's asking for the judgment of God. He's saying, God, I need you to judge me. If I've done wrong, punish me. But if I've done right, then save me. For strangers have risen up against me, and oppressors seek after my soul. They have not set God before them. Selah. These are people that have not sought the Lord. They have not sought the Lord like David did, and so he calls upon the judgment of God upon them, and he calls upon God to deliver him. He says, behold, God is my helper. The Lord is with them that uphold my soul. He will reward evil unto my enemies and cut them off in thy truth. So verse 5 then is really the key to this. He's saying God will judge. He will reward evil to my enemies and cut them off in thy truth. Now, no Christian ever prays this. This actually has got nothing to do with being a Christian whatsoever. Nothing to do. First of all, we're not a Bronze Age king. We're not David. We're not the leader of Israel. We're not in the Old Covenant. We're not under law. We Christians are under grace. So we do not have to ask the Lord to bring evil upon our enemies and to cut them off. That is to kill them in thy truth. I will freely sacrifice unto thee. I will praise thy name, O Lord, for it is good. Why? Why does he praise the Lord? Because he has delivered me out of all my trouble, and my enemies hath seen his desire. My eye has seen his desire upon my enemies. So this is David. He's rejoicing. He says, I will sacrifice and I will praise thy name, O Lord, for it is good. Why is the Lord's name good? Because he delivered David out of trouble and he's destroyed David's enemies. And David has had the joy of seeing the destruction of God come upon his enemies. This isn't anything to do with being a Christian. This isn't even a Christian sentiment. We do not rejoice when our enemies are destroyed, do we? Not as Christians, we don't. So what is this salvation? Verse 1. Well, it's linked to the salvation of verse 7. He has delivered me out of all my trouble. In the old covenant, David had lots of trouble, had lots of enemies, lots of assassins were against him, lots of nations came up against him, but the Lord has delivered him out of all his troubles, and he has had the joy of seeing his desire. And what was David's desire? That his enemies might be destroyed. Well, there we are, two amazing psalms. Sometimes they're nothing at all to do with being a Christian, but they're psalms that we can learn from. We can understand more and more every day what it was like for David to live in this old covenant. Well, God bless you. Great to speak to you. Look forward to speaking to you again tomorrow. Bye for now.